What's up? What's up? It's Raphael with NBA Draft Junkies. I have a special guest today. And Twitter's like the greatest thing ever. Twitter's where you can meet different people. And NBA Draft Twitter is also just kind of like this unique club of its own where everybody's, actually for me, it's like you meet people that are similar to you that, as I like to call, draft junkies, but people that just talk about the draft all day and just do their research on different players. And it's one of those things where you have to really have a love for it. So I've been following, his name is Jake Rosen. I've been following him for quite a while. I've always loved his insight on the draft. And so reached out to him, see if he wanted to be a guest on the show. And here he is. So Jake, go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, first off, Raphael, I just want to give a huge shout out to you for having me on the show. I sent out a little tweet that I'm open to doing podcasts, and you were the first person to hit me up. So that was pretty cool, and I'm happy to be here.
All right. Well, man, I'm hungry, just like you are. And so I want my platform to be an opportunity for other, people that love the draft to just get on and just show their stuff in a sense. Like, I know you have your website and you've been covering the draft, and it's obviously a passion of yours. So if I can have like a platform that gives people the opportunity to have their opinions heard by a different audience. Not saying that I have like a big audience, but I think eventually I will. And so I would love to just have as many guests on as possible just to talk NBA draft, because this is what we all love to do. And so, when you're talking NBA draft, it's just like this automatic friendship that you have with somebody, because like I said, it's such a niche market. So today, I wanted to hear your big board, right?
Okay.
So this show is basically Jake Rosen's big board. So we'll start off with it. Who's number one on your big board?
So number one, I just wrote a huge piece on him. It's pinned to my Twitter profile at Jake in the Paint if you want to go read it, on LaMelo Ball, on why he's my number one prospect. It was probably the biggest piece in individual breakdown that I've written ever. I really took a deep dive into him, how he translates, what translates. I took it back to and a big thing of why I'm so high on LaMelo is like his development arc, starting all the way at Chino Hills. Like, I loved watching those Chino Hills teams. One, they were super fun, and two, it was just unique and special. And that's given LaMelo a lot of the pluses and negatives that he's had today. Like, Chino Hills didn't really play half-court defense, so he was never asked to play half-court defense, which is why his positioning off ball, he doesn't focus on help responsibilities, he gets back cut a lot, all those little things. But it opened up the door for this savant point guard to grow into himself. And I wrote this, like, thinking outside the box, it wasn't just like encouraged, it was required. If you were going to be in the Ball family and you were going to play for Chino Hills High School, you had to try things. And from 14 years old on, LaMelo has been given a leash to try whatever he wants. And sure, has that resulted in some turnover prone plays and some home run strikes that he probably shouldn't try to hit? Yes, but you take the little bit of negative with the overwhelming positive. And I just think LaMelo is truly a special basketball player. And that's really all there is to it. Sorry for my dog. She's a new puppy. She's a little wild right now. But LaMelo Ball is my number one prospect for all those reasons. The biggest concern I think people have, I see a lot, is people call him a non-shooter. I don't know where you're at on that, but I would strongly push against that. I know the splits were bad. I think it's 25% from three, but with LaMelo, you're preaching volume. And he, at the end of the day, he's a 6'7" point guard. And the scenario that I keep telling people is look at Luka Doncic. Like, Luka Doncic is only shooting 31 or 32% from three, but he's getting up 9 a game. So this 3-point gravity, and especially since the majority of them are above the break pull-up threes, defenses have to respect that. You have to go out on that. You can't drop off a pick and roll or else he'll pull it. And that's just defenses responding to volume, and that's what I loved about LaMelo. Like, even though the shots weren't falling, he was still willing to take them. He was still taking 6 a game in the NBL as an 18-year-old who wasn't shooting particularly well from deep. So I love his confidence. I love the volume, which is why a huge reason why I'm buying the shot. Like, I don't need him to get to this 40% three-point shooter. I just need to get him to a respectable percentage in the low 30s because the volume is going to get there. I think there's some other things he needs to improve on in terms of frame. He's super skinny, sometimes contact averse around the basket. But again, you just don't want to overthink someone who's 6'7" and is as special thinking the game as LaMelo Ball is.
Wow, you said a handful there.
Yeah.
And clearly you're very passionate about LaMelo being your number one. So first I wanted to talk about Chino Hills. I agree with you 100% as far as him not having to play defense, which has led to, issues and concerns about him being a defender. Also, the part that I love that you mentioned was the creativity. And that's something you can't teach. Like, you can't go in the gym and say, I'm going to work on my LaMelo Ball passing. Like, that's just his natural instincts, and that's his confidence. Like, it takes an enormous amount of confidence to try things that he does. I mean, I've seen him with behind the back passes, underhand scoop passes, and that all comes with having a dad or a coach that allows you to be you, allows you to make mistakes and not, be penalized for trying different things. So my fear for LaMelo is, let's say he goes to the Knicks, right? And let's say Tibbs is the coach. Is Tibbs going to allow him that creativity, or does he stifle it? And I think Melo is one of those guys you have to just let him be who he is. So
Yeah.
I don't know if he would have played well with a Larry Brown. Or even for example, I guess the closest thing that we've seen come into the NBA, and this is probably like before your time. I mean, I'm sure you know who he is, but I don't know if you remember Jason Williams' rookie year in Sacramento when he was just throwing crazy passes. And I mean, it was Weber's team, obviously, but he was the one that made the Kings fun to watch. And then I feel like once he got to Memphis, he became a better player. Hubie Brown taught him, the game, but he ended up like honing down considerably on his creativity. I hope that doesn't happen to LaMelo, but it could be possible. I mean, it's all about going to the right coach. I mean, there are some coaches in the NBA that are still somewhat old school, and they're going to be hesitant to give an 18-year-old the reins to just have total freedom. So that's one of my biggest concerns about LaMelo. I actually have Killian number one on my draft board as far as guards, but we can talk about that later.
So we're definitely going to talk about Killian, but I was going to say that's a great point about the coaches, and I'm a diehard Knicks fan too. So something I've been preaching to all my Knicks fans, whether it's online or offline, I want the Knicks to wait until after the draft to hire their coach, because let's just say Tibbs and Kenny Atkinson, it appears, are the two front runners. I think based on where the team is, I would prefer Kenny Atkinson. But let's say you do get a guy like Anthony Edwards. And Anthony Edwards and LaMelo are fascinating to me because while they're my two top prospects, the way I want to go about their development is completely opposite. I want Anthony Edwards to have a hard-nosed, tough coach who forces him to be engaged off the ball in offense, who forces him to be engaged off the ball in defense. I want him to say, look, you're a great cutter. Look to cut. I want him to say, you need to get to the rim X amount of times per game, or else you're not getting these reps. I want some coach for Anthony Edwards. I don't want him to just have the keys, because that's what we saw at Georgia, and that's when he settles into bad habits. You have a freak power athlete. I want a coach to be on him from day one. With LaMelo, you want the coach like Kenny Atkinson, exactly what you said, who's used to developing young guys, and you don't want to spoil or hone in any of that creativity, because that's what makes him great. So with LaMelo, and you saw him improve over the course of the NBL, you just need him to get into a situation where he has the freedom to figure out what works and what doesn't. And he's going to figure it out. He's just that smart, and he has the handle, he has the passing ability, he has the size, whatever you want to call it. What he has, I think, is genuinely unteachable. I think that's because of a one-of-one development arc, and there's pretty much no way to replicate that. So when you get a guy like LaMelo, I think the coaching situation is 100% going to play a huge part in his development for sure.
I agree. So, all right, you get Melo's your number one on your board.
Mm-hmm.
Now, take off I mean, I guess you can use your biased Knicks fan. You can use that. But what do you think is the ideal fit? And then another trick question: what do you think is the worst case, the worst fit for Melo? So I'll give you mine. I think, like you said, you made a great point. If the Knicks hire Atkinson, I think that's best case scenario from everything from a basketball, from a marketing point of view, from coaching. I think, in my opinion, which is weird. I mean, I guess it's not weird. Everybody has their own opinion. I think Golden State is the absolute worst situation for LaMelo. I think that they're in win now mode, and because they're in win now mode, they aren't going to allow him to. I don't know. I just see like a Draymond just getting on him and just being tough on him, and it could possibly be detrimental. But I mean, he does have LeVar as his dad, so he probably has. He is used to being coached tough and tough love. But I just don't think that Golden State situation would be ideal for him. So
Yeah,
in your situation or in your opinion, what are the best and worst scenarios for LaMelo?
So I mean, the Golden State fit is super interesting. I don't think they would take him because I think they're trying to maximize like the final years of this Steph, Clay, Draymond core, and they're trying to win a championship. So I don't think they would take him. If they were to take him, I think it would be under the premise of, hey, we're building for the future. Like, we know this isn't going to run forever. And so what better guard to have him study under than Steph Curry? And like, I do think LaMelo and Steph probably could exist even with Clay, because if you just think about how good those guys are moving off the ball. So like, the big key for me, like, on not loving that fit is that their timeline, like, they're winning now, and he's not going to have that leash, whether it's in the regular season or the playoffs. Like, I don't necessarily want LaMelo Ball playing playoff basketball next year as like high usage point guard. I don't know if he's ready for that. And that's, maybe it'll be better for him long term, but like, if Golden State is their ultimate goal is trying to win a championship, they probably don't want LaMelo Ball playing high leverage playoff minutes as a rookie.
Right.
So for me, I do think there's one worse situation. I'm gonna say Minnesota. Minnesota, like, the clock isn't fully ticking, but it somewhat is. They acquired D'Angelo Russell. They already have Karl Anthony Towns, which is already two brutal defenders. D'Angelo Russell is really unwilling to go off ball and doesn't really provide a ton of off ball value. He loves his pull up mid ranges, his teardrops. He's super ball dominant. Just that situation with the backcourt with D'Lo combined with the defensive woes, like, I really can't get behind that. But it's the toss up between those two for me.
Okay. All right. I like that. So you already mentioned Anthony Edwards is your number two. So explain to my audience why you have Anthony Edwards as your number two on your big board.
So, I mean, up until about 6 weeks ago, Anthony Edwards is my number one, and he's been my number one since the All-Star circuit in high school last year, when I saw him at McDonald's. And the reason for that is just you rarely come across someone with that athleticism arsenal combined with the potential shot making flashes that he's shown. And that was the reason why he was my number one prospect the entire time. You just saw these games. I saw it in person when he came to Hoop Fest in DC. He exploded for 40 points and a half. And he did the same thing in Maui against Michigan State. And he just has these outbursts where it's just like, man, if he could put it all together, if he could slash the rim, be a free throw rate monster, combined with this step back, the footwork has improved. I think he's a good shot maker. I'm not sure how good of a shooter he is. And that's ultimately one part that had me derailed. But when I watched him more, it just wasn't as consistent as I had hoped. And you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, look, like, this is what it is. Like, he turned in a full season sample, and like, it had his highs, it had his lows. And you just need to take that for what it was. I still believe in Ant. I think he does need to be brought along slower and harsher than LaMelo, as we talked about, but I believe in him. He's a super explosive athlete. I just think, and he's super talented. Like, there's no doubt about that. And he generates so much gravity. Like, his best passing moments are when he actually decides to attack the basket and he'll draw three defenders in the snap of a finger. Like, there's just not that many guys that can do that. But if you're going to throw it all away 75% of the time taking fadeaway long twos, then what is it really worth? And that's the kind of question you have to ask with Ant. People used to ask the question, like, is it that he can't get to the rim or he won't get to the rim? I think he can. Like, the
There's
handle
no doubt
isn't,
about that.
oh,
He can get
yeah, I
to the
mean,
rim when he wants to.
listen, his handle is not elite by any means, but it doesn't hold him back. Like, he's absolutely, I can say it a million times, power athlete, like the definition of it. Broad shoulders, stocky frame. He'll bump you off your spot in a second. He can jump off 1, 2, you name it. Like, he can do it all. So I just think if you get him in a system and a setting where people are hard on him and they're staying on him to be engaged, take the right shots, and NBA, like, colleges are like, NBA teams are smarter than colleges. Like, there's no secret beyond that. And I have confidence that if he sits with an NBA front office or sits with an NBA analytics manager and says, hey, look, like, these are your spots. Get to these spots. I mean, we saw Jason Tatum get so much more efficient by cutting his pull-up twos and like cutting down his pull-up twos and trading them for pull-up threes. And like, do I think Ant could go on a tear that Jason Tatum went on like this, February? God, that sounds like 10 years ago,
Right.
but February. Yeah, I think that's possible. And it just all depends on the coaching staff and the setting he gets brought into. But there's no doubt the tools and the talent are there.
I agree. I have some red flags on Edwards, just like everybody else does. I can't confirm this, but I saw on the video that ESPN dropped, they said that he's been below 500 in high school, AAU, and college. He's never been above 500.
So can I go ahead with this real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Because as someone who watches a ton of high school basketball and a ton of AAU basketball, and this has been a huge point about Ant forever. Like, he didn't win in high school, he didn't win in AAU. And if you want to come to me and say, look, I don't know if Anthony Edwards as a primary initiator, as a primary ball handler, I don't know if he could be conducive to winning. I can get behind that argument. That is fair. Like, I don't know if he's that level of a playmaker. The shot selection is certainly not there yet. That is a valid argument to me. And I don't think he's this big wing primary option like I used to. But this is what I'll just say. Like, he played with Holy Spirit in high school in Georgia, which is by no means a powerhouse. And because of his name, they got invited to events and played games that they probably had no business playing in, just as a school with the talent. So it's not a shock to me. Like, that, I watched them live. Like, that team did not belong at Hoop Fest, but everyone wants to see Anthony Edwards. So it's not a surprise that that team wasn't very good. And if you look at the Georgia team, they probably had 8 or 9 freshmen playing in the SEC. It's not a shock to me that they weren't very good. Same thing with Atlanta Express, not super talented. So I don't disagree. Like, the point isn't invalid. Like, I don't want it to come off like that. It certainly is a valid point and it's valid concerns. I just don't like when like people like ESPN or mainstream outlets use and cite those numbers without necessarily understanding the context, if that makes sense.
Well, I definitely get your point. But my question is, does he want to win? Because in high school, AAU, and college, you're in control. You basically can pick your teammates. The NBA, you can't. In high school, I mean, Holy Spirit Prep, I think they're more so known for like their chess team than basketball. But he didn't start off there. He transferred there. Then AAU, you got an opportunity to like pick your team. You know, you can go to a better Adidas program or, you know, one of the Nike EYBL programs. You can get, I mean, with his name and his star power, he could have got some of the top players in Georgia to come play with him because he could say, hey, look, all the scouts are going to be watching me. If you want an opportunity to be seen or, let's team up. And then at the University of Georgia, I know he said he wanted to stay close to home, but at the end of the day, he knew like what the team was when he got there. So it's like I don't know for sure. I'm just speculating here, but he's chosen those situations. In the NBA, you can't pick your teammates. So I feel like going to college, unless there's injuries, as a top recruit, you already know what the team is. You know, like you choose. You have total control over your situation. And so my question to you is, do you think he's choosing these situations because it allows him to do whatever he wants to do, where he doesn't necessarily really have to be coached? he doesn't have to do anything but get his numbers? Or do you think it's just a coincidence?
So I think this is a really, really interesting wiring question, honestly, that I don't know if I'm fit to answer from an Anthony Edwards perspective because, look, I don't know the guy. I've had one conversation with him, and it was an interview that we didn't mention anything about this. But what I will say is, in the NBA, your ultimate goal is to win. For most guys, you want to win. In college, and the ultimate goal is getting to the NBA and getting to a position where you are viewed as a consensus top 3 pick, which he is. So if we're taking it all the way back and you're Anthony Edwards and you want to be seen, I am huge on picking the right fit. And this, I've gone on many podcasts and said this, you got to pick the right fit, whether it's high school, whether it's college, you got to pick the best fit for you. I don't think that it's far-fetched to think that Anthony Edwards and his circle sat in the living room when he was a sophomore in high school and said, look, like, we want him to get his reps. And personally, I think there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's not a secret that if Anthony Edwards wanted to go to Norcross, he could have gone to Norcross. Like, they would have made it happen. If he wants to play for Atlanta Celtics, he would have gone and played for Atlanta Celtics. Like, I don't think this is like a thing that no one wants to play with. It's not that. It's whether he chose. I think you're asking, like, what did he choose these situations? Because it was like the cop out for him to get his numbers and get his reps. Or my thing would be like, did he know who he was, know what his game is, and then pick these situations because he thought it would put him long-term in the best position? Like, I don't know. I think if I'm Anthony Edwards, look, would I've loved to see him at Florida State? I would have loved to see him at Florida State. I don't think he did anything wrong by picking Georgia. Would I have loved to see him get held to a higher standard? Sure. But I don't know what goes on in Coach Green's film room. And I wish I did, but sadly I don't. So I think it's a really interesting wiring question, especially with Ant, but I really don't feel comfortable saying anything other than, look, he knew who he was and what his game was. And all his fit, like, what I will say is all his destinations line up with each other. Like, Holy Spirit, rather mediocre team in Georgia, he's the guy, gets his reps. Atlanta Express, rather mediocre team on the circuit, he gets his reps. Georgia, mediocre team in SEC, he gets his reps. So, like, there is a common theme there, whether it's positive or whether it has a negative connotation, I'm not comfortable saying, but it's something that I think is super interesting. And if I were advising Anthony Edwards, I don't think he necessarily made a wrong step, if that makes sense. Like, I fully support everything he did.
Yeah, I don't think he made the wrong step, but I do think that it led to these type of questions, which kind of goes back into your point of you would like to see him go to a team where he's being pushed and has a hard-nosed coach. And I wonder how is that adjustment going to be for him? I mean, it's an adjustment for every highly touted high school player going to, a program where you got a tough coach. I mean, if you go to Kentucky, Cal is going to coach you. He's going to be on your neck, whether you are the number one prospect or not, because he doesn't need you. He doesn't need you at all. Like, I listened to the podcast, but it wasn't actually Cal, but it was Patino. And Antoine Walker said that he wasn't playing a lot as a freshman, and he's going to go home for Christmas break, and he thought about transferring, and Patino was like, okay, go ahead. And so it made him, well, he was in a situation where Patino, that team was loaded. So either you, as Antoine Walker, you had to get with the program and accept your role, or you can transfer, but you have to sit out a year. And I think that kind of helped Antoine Walker a lot throughout his career. And then, as you know, he made a lot of money. Everything kind of changed a little bit. But I wonder, how does Anthony Edwards react to that if he's in that situation?
So it's a valid question. Like, we have never seen Anthony Edwards not be the guy. Like, we straight up haven't seen it. Like,
same with Melo. We haven't seen Melo. I mean, he wasn't the guy his freshman year, but we haven't seen him in a situation that wasn't set up for him to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. And I do think he's good enough where you would tailor your NBA team around him and play style around him, but we moved on from him, so that's fair. Mm-hmm. But with Ant, it's a fair concern. Like, even to the, like, most of these top guys are playing FIBA where we can see them. How do you coexist with other guys? And we just haven't seen that from him. Holy Spirit, he was the guy. Atlanta Express, he was the guy. He didn't play FIBA. He didn't he like I always love when I see players go to IMG and go to Montverde, because you are forced to play with other guys and you're forced to develop these off-ball skills, which Ant coincidentally actually really did develop at Georgia with this cutting, where he became a legit like plus cutter. But still, at Georgia, he was the guy. So it's definitely valid, and I'm super interested to see like how does he handle not being the focal point. It's going to be really interesting.
All right. So now the big question: best
Mm-hmm.
case scenario, worst case scenario.
So the best case scenario, and I'm hoping this happens because I would absolutely love to see it. My best case scenario for him is Atlanta, 100%. He can go off the ball with Trey. He can be a good cutter. He has good wing defenders to kind of show him the lines and clean up for his mistakes. And with him and Trey, like Atlanta long term needs a second star. Like they have a lot of really, really good pieces. They have a lot of really good wings. And whether they use them to trade and get that second guy who can move the needle, that remains to be seen. But I think Ant gives them a good shot at getting that second star while also fitting with Trey. Like he can go off the ball, and he'll be forced to go off the ball because Trey is incredible on the ball. And I don't know if he like led the NBA in time on the ball, but he was up there. I remember seeing one stat. So you're going to force Ant to go off the ball. He's going to keep expanding on the cutting. He's going to become more comfortable and engaged being a catch and shoot shooter because he has to be. Those are where his looks are going to come from with Trey. And I just think that's the perfect scenario for his development. They're not trying to win anytime soon. Obviously, they're trying to be a playoff team, but they don't have these championship aspirations. So he can be brung along. He doesn't need to be thrown into the fire. I think that's the absolute money spot for him.
Worst case scenario.
So worst case scenario, there's a bunch of different ways. I think I would probably say, just looking at like the lottery, Detroit probably. Like I Detroit or New York, honestly. If New York doesn't hire Tibbs, if they do hire Tibbs, it's different. But anyway, just where there is no other like concrete piece and where he's going to be the guy from day one, like then we will probably see the Ant where it's like, I'm gonna get my numbers up, I'm gonna be semi-efficient, I'm probably not gonna be conducive to winning, but like I'm a rookie, I'm the number 2 pick, I'm the number 1 pick, like they're telling me to get my reps, I'm gonna go. And like while that may look productive from a player development standpoint in the box score, I'm not necessarily sure that that's in his best interest or the team's best interest long term.
I don't think Detroit would be a bad fit. I mean, Blake Griffin is still there, and it's still his team for the most part. I do think he'd probably get frustrated with it. I mean, you're going from Chris Paul and even like Derrick Rose to, having to live with Edwards' immaturity, which, I mean, he's a kid. He's still young. So I think that would be difficult. And then based off his contract, it looks like Blake is going to be there because I can't see anybody taking on his contract. So I don't think it would be a bad fit. I think Dwayne Casey I think he's a good enough coach to where he'll be a good example. Atlanta, I have questions about Atlanta because you have to have one of those guys is going to have to choose to get better at defense. If you have Anthony and Trey, both guys are known for their scoring, but they also have a reputation for not being the most engaged on the defensive end. So that's going to put a lot of pressure on Capella and Collins if he's there. And it's his hometown. That would be interesting. Like I could see it like really working out on one hand, but then I could also see it being somewhat of a questionable fit because I think Trey might be like Iverson in a sense that you're going to have to surround him with a lot of defenders and surround him with floor spacers that don't necessarily need the ball. But that's just my opinion on that. I think New York with Tibbs would be a decent fit. I think Charlotte would be a really good fit for him.
I like what they have in Charlotte. I like watching them. I'm not gonna lie. I like watching them.
I think Charlotte and they could use some star power there too. All right, so
well, before we move on from that, Ant, I just want to make one last point. Like, I do think, and it's valid, like there are concerns with Atlanta. The reason why I like it a lot is because while they do need that second star long term, they don't necessarily need Anthony Edwards right now. So if Ant's going to go out there and you're going to BS on defense and you're going to ball watch, you're going to get backdoor and you're going to get back cut. Okay, Kevin Herter, go get him out. Cam Reddish, go get him out. Like they have these wingy two-way players who can guard 2 through 4. Like they have a bunch of them. So you kind of throw Ant into that fire and see how he develops with them. Well, I think he actually look, he's going to play, he's going to get his reps. That's what happens when you're in the top 3. Like if you don't believe that, look at RJ Barrett this past year. You get your reps. There's no secret about that. But I do think there is not pressure, but there's other guys who play his same position there that could push him. So I think offense, I think there's definitely defensive concerns, but that's something that I like there.
But can you bench him in his hometown? That's where I think it becomes tough because, I have quite a few friends that are NBA players, not necessarily high level NBA players, but I even know when they go on the road, the just amount of pressure that they have for ticket requests, friends, family. So him having to do that 41 times a year on top of learning the game as a rookie, on top of just, family pulling you here and there, and then being the hometown hero. And I think it's a tough situation for the player and the coach because the coach knows that he's a top pick, hometown guy. Can you really, really discipline him the way you want to, or do you just have to let him, continue with his bad habits? Which, of course, there has to be some leeway there because he's going to make a ton of mistakes because he's 18 years old. So I think that would be a tough situation on both sides. All right, so moving on, who is your number 3?
I have Onyeka Okongwu at number 3. I was a little bit resistant towards him earlier in the year because I was 6'9" center. I don't love big men. I'm just gonna put it out there. I just don't think. I think it's really tough for them to really move the needle in your front. Unless you're outlier good defensively or outlier good offensively. But even if you're outlier good offensively, we see Karl Anthony Towns, that team has been meddling for a long, long time because he can't bring it on defense. And I just think when you're team building, if you have a center that is really bad at defense, that makes things borderline impossible. So that's why getting a star center, quote unquote, you're seeing it less and less. But with Okongwu, the more I watched him, I think he's the best two-way player in the draft, point blank period. And he's just so sound and pretty much tailor-made for today's game. And the Bam comps get thrown out a ton. They're just pretty much the same, measuring wise, 6'9", really strong centers who move really well. I think Bam probably moves a little bit better than him, but you see it, the resemblance is real. And with Okongwu, you just have someone who he can get off the floor in a set, literally half a second, less than that. It's you blink and he's at that rim. And that is just so huge for his offensive and defensive production, production and development, because on defense, while he's 6'9", undersized, he gets off the ground and makes up for it. You see someone like Brandon Clark. Brandon Clark's only 6'8", but he's a monster rim protector because he gets off the ground in a split second, and no one can match that. Okongwu, he's super sound, his verticality as a shot blocker, and he's not just a rim runner. I do believe he'll shoot to an extent. If you go back and watch these Chino Hills highlight tapes from his freshman year, he's always been comfortable shooting these free throw line long 2 jumpers. And just the longer you have and the longer you've been shooting game rep jumpers, the better you are at it. That's really it. I wish he shot more this year. So I don't feel 100% confident he's going to be a 3-point shooter. And I don't think he needs to be to necessarily return top 3 value in this draft. But it's certainly an area that I'd love to see him improve on. But one thing that he got better at throughout the year is the passing. And he made some impressive short roll passes, nothing like Xavier Tillman, but just realizing the leverage he had out of the post, making simple skip passes, and just capitalizing on his rim gravity because everyone pays so much attention to him at the rim. So just in a class that doesn't have a lot of sure things at the top, I think Okongwu is probably as close as you're going to get to an impact two-way starting big man.
His rise has been crazy. Who would have thought that at Chino Hills that he was going to be possibly a top 5 pick.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see it. And I watched him early. And one of the things that I liked about him was, I mean, I think he has advanced feel as a post player. I mean, advanced like post moves, I should say. Like he doesn't have a lot of post moves, but he has his go-to, and he has counters, and he has excellent touch. And then of course, the athleticism, the bounce. Um, he's physical. I think earlier in the season he was trying to overpower guys a lot, and he picked up a lot of charges. I like him. I like him a lot. I I'm curious to see where he goes because I think he can go as high as like number 3.
Mm-hmm.
In your situation, I think even if a team like Golden State has the number 1 pick, you have to strongly consider him number 1 because I think he fits what they're trying to do. I think Charlotte would be an ideal situation for him. I don't know if they'll be able to. I don't know if they'll be picking that high. But yeah, I mean, I really like what he brings to the table. The Bam comparisons they're interesting because I guess you would compare him to Bam now because Bam at Kentucky was not allowed to show everything that he's showing now. I didn't see the passing. I didn't see, like, if you would have told me a team, an NBA team, a playoff team is going to run their offense through Bam, I would have been like, whatever. I just thought he was just a hard worker, a guy that looked to finish everything strong around the paint. So I don't know if Kentucky was holding him back or Miami just brought something out of it. I don't know. But
Probably a little bit of both, honestly.
yeah, a little bit of both. But yeah, I mean, I like the comparison. I even think worst case scenario, he could be Andre Drummond, just with a little bit more floor space. I think he's going to be a good rebounder. I wish we would have had an opportunity to watch him play this season with spacing because there was no spacing at USC.
I also wish he played with point guards that would pass him the ball. But
yeah, yep. So yeah, and I think that's one of the things you have to consider when you put together your list of how much better would he be if he had a point guard, like if he had someone to deliver him the ball, especially in space.
Yeah, I mean, it goes like you have to take in, and we're going to talk about team context a lot, especially as we get further down my lottery. Like, think about Obi Toppin. Like, if Okongwu was playing in Obi Toppin's role where you had 4 shooters around you at all times and you were diving to the rim, like, I don't know. I don't think it's unplausible that Okongwu could have led the country in dunks. I think it's a possibility. And you take that compared to like Okongwu, who's playing with you at USC with no floor spacing and no guards who want to give him the ball. And he basically 2 bigs, playing with Rakocevic basically at all times. And like he still was super productive. Like that stuff matters to me. And that he gets like a bump up for that, regardless. Like whether you think it's right or wrong, you have to take that stuff into account. And I can't even believe that I missed like the part about him finishing. You touched on it a little bit, but like the touch around the rim, he's basically ambidextrous with his left and right hand.
Both hands, yep.
Scoop finishes, post hooks. And like you said, he doesn't have like the most, like, I'm trying to figure out the word for this, like maybe diverse post arsenal, if we want to call that, but like you don't need to be in today's game. You're not getting posted up all the time. But if he can be like comfortable and productive in the post, just giving like a simple drop step and using that pop time and touch just to like flip a sky hook or just a baby hook over the defense, like that stuff matters because then all of a sudden you're attracting 2 defenders when you're in the post, and that makes these passing reads that much easier. So I just think a lot of his game is going to come together as he gets older and watches more film, learns these reads more, is put in these short roll positions, sees more defenders doubling him in the post. Like I think he's only going to get better, and he has a great foundation, both skill-wise and athletic-wise.
Yeah, and I'm buying his potential as a shooter. I mean, just based off his touch, based off of the few jumpers that I saw him shoot, he looked pretty comfortable doing it. And he's someone who I wouldn't be shocked by year 3 and maybe sooner, maybe year 3 or even 4, that he becomes a 3-point threat. All right, so best case scenario and worst case scenario.
So I'm going to say I think I like the Golden State fit. I think he fits there. And I think if they were to pick anyone like in the top 5 or in this like towards the class and you said, hey, we can't trade the pick. We don't think we're getting good value for it. We want to pick someone who can help us win a championship. Like, I think it's either going to be Okongwu or Devin Vassell. And that's just where I'm at on those two guys. And the team got next. So I like Golden State. I also really like the Washington fit, like the Wizards fit. And I think that's in the range that he could go. You have John Wall coming back. So you have an electric point guard. I'm not the biggest John Wall fan, but like he's a really good NBA point guard. There's not that you can't, there's no way around that. And they were productive as an offensive team, but they couldn't stop anyone. I think Bradley Beal went on Zach Lowe's podcast and said, we could put the ball in the basket. Our problem was we couldn't stop a grandma. So what better guy to put in Okongwu and have him shore up that back line? He's super mobile. He can hedge out. He can ice. He can drop. Even when he drops, he's still super good at contesting like pull-up shooters and floaters. And he's a really solid rim protector, even at 6'9". I don't know if like he can ever anchor like a prime time defense by himself. Like, especially like I don't think he's going to go to Washington and turn their entire defense around, but he certainly will help. And I really like that situation on both ends of the floor, just based on what Washington has and what they need.
Yeah, and off the top of my head, has John Wall had a vertical lob threat?
We can go back. I think JaVale was there for a little bit.
Oh yeah, that was that young,
like early, yeah,
with Nick Young and
yep.
I had a friend. I won't mention his name, but he played on that team. He said, man, they were kids. So they were wrestling in the locker room, winning, losing didn't matter. We're going out to the club tonight. So I forgot about JaVale, but other than that, like I thought Wall had a good. I thought he had decent chemistry with Gortat as far as like a role man. Even though Gortat was he the one that made the comment everyone eats at the ball when Wall was out? I could be wrong.
Oh,
I think he made a comment that the ball moved a little bit more when Wall was out. But other than that, like I can't think off the top of my head that Wall has had a good role man that's also a vertical lob threat. And so I think that could even, take the Wizards to another level. And I never thought about that off the top of my head. So that's a good one. So what is your worst case scenario for him?
I would say the worst case scenario, Atlanta.
Worst fit.
Atlanta.
Oh yeah, I think it makes zero sense for
It just doesn't make any sense. Like there's no stretch of the imagination that it makes any sense whatsoever. Like even if you didn't have Capella, I don't know if I love playing him with Collins, like 2 6'9" forwards. Collins, the defense has gotten better, but I think he still has ways to go there. But you traded for Clint Capella and you're paying him money. So that would just make absolutely no sense to me. I think that's like one of the most obvious like stayaways.
Right. Even though he would help them defensively. But, I'm not really concerned about his height at 6'9". He has a plus 7 foot wingspan.
No.
And so he plays
also
another with your arms.
Yeah, another one that I'll throw out there, like New York. As much as I love him, like going to New York when you already have Mitchell Robinson and you don't have a point guard to pass you the ball and a point guard to initiate the offense, like I just think that would be probably a disaster, as good as Okongwu is.
I'm convinced they're getting a point guard this summer, whether it's Van Vliet, whether it's some type of CAA connection deal with Chris Paul. I'm convinced they're going to get a point guard or one of their big CAA clients to New York, but that's a whole nother story. All right, number 4 on your list.
So at number 4, I got your boy Killian Hayes. I had Killian as high as 2 at one point. There's just a few things that made me lower a little bit, but honestly, like the 2 through 4, I think they're all in the same group to me, and you could probably sway me in some kind of order, even though I'm probably set on Ant at 2. 3 and 4, you could probably mix and match those. But with Killian, I wrote this in my mailbag that drop. There's not a prospect that I did more of a 180 on than Killian. Like before the year, I had him 15, I think, like outside the lottery because I wanted to love him. Like I watched the FIBA tape and you saw this like incredibly smart passer, but like he could not blow by anyone. He could not create any advantages. He had no burst, no pop. He was strong, but he didn't really know how to use it. The handle wasn't completely there yet. And on defense, he was just an absolute disaster. Like Andre Curbelo from Lehigh is going to Illinois. literally busted him for an entire game. Like, and when I'm talking busted, like he literally just cleanly blew by him with a hezzy every single possession or like a cross. Like Killian looked so stiff. Like if you have any free time, you can go find them. I think they were like U17 games or FIBA U17 or U18, something from like 2017 summer. You probably won't even recognize him, honestly,
Was that the
because
year that the USA team blew them out?
yeah. So that
Okay.
was the USA team with like, I think Isaiah Stewart, Vernon Carey, Romeo Weems. I don't know if Okoro was on that team, like Jeremy Roach, RJ Hampton, like all those guys.
I've talked
And
to a parent of a player that was on that team, and he saw that Killian was high on my list, and he reminded me 100. Watch that film. Go watch the film, and
so
so. But yeah,
so
go ahead.
that was the first time I saw Killian, and like you could just tell, like high end prospects don't get intimidated a lot, but you could kind of tell like Killian and Maladone and like Casalone, like as good as they were, they had never seen anything like this USA team. And like, to be fair, most people don't. Like you assemble, and what USA basketball does a great job of, they make the best team. They don't pick the 12 best players. They create the best team. So if you give USA basketball the keys to some of the best talent in the country and they develop this team, and it's as a 17-year-old point guard, like you're going to look shell-shocked, and he was shell-shocked that game. And I wasn't blown away, and I dug into more of it, and that's how I landed on him outside the lottery. But then I saw him at Ulm this year, and he's just completely new guy, like completely new guy on both ends of the floor. He added bursts on offense. He's learning how to leverage his size. His deceleration is incredible. Like he has this move down power. Like he'll blow by the first defender, then he'll plant and like decelerate into a floater, but keep his primary defender on his back, like because he's super strong. A lot of like tough and one finishes, and like the shot creation and footwork improvements that he made in the past year are pretty off the charts. Like on offense, the fact that he's like doing hardened step backs in a real game now at 18 years old in a pro league is off the charts, and making them at a pretty high clip. And then on defense, someone who was just a complete negative, and I didn't even know if he was like playable on that end of the floor on defense. He's now like, he got so much quicker laterally. He's hounding guys at the point of attack, using his 6'5" strong frame. He's anticipating off the ball. He's like a genuinely plus team defender as a point guard. And like he took that side of the ball, which used to be a complete negative for him, and now is going to become this like two-way point guard. And I did a complete 180 on him, and I can't chalk it up to anything but his personal development and athletic developmental track and skill development track. Like it's pretty remarkable, and he deserves all the credit in the world for that.
Yeah, I'm high on Killian. I was lucky enough to do a video on him early in the season, and I'm glad I did before everyone kind of caught on to it. And it's doing well. I think it has over like 50,000 views.
Wow.
And so, but yeah, I saw like maybe, I don't know, it was pretty early in the season. I was maybe like September. No, not September, not that early.
It was, I remember when I really got eye-opened by him, it was like October. It was way before all the college season started. So that's when he really started balling, like late October, early November.
Yep. And the first time I saw him first time I saw him live, well, first and only time I saw him live was at Basketball Without Borders in LA 2018. And I was just looking at my notes, and I was just thinking like, oh man, he's a creative passer. He has a great size. But like you said, I didn't see the athleticism. I didn't see the burst. I didn't see any of that. And I don't know what he did last summer. I don't know if he was eating some good German food or what, but I mean, just his growth as a player was tremendous. I do think that he needs to work on his right hand. Like he doesn't use it at all. But see, I'm a lefty, and I was never like a great player. But one thing about being left-handed is we can always get back left. Always. Like, I mean, you can play, make us go right, and we always have some type of move that we can get back to our left. I mean, think of like Ginobili. They used to sit on his right hand, make him go right. But
it doesn't matter.
He can get back left. And so I see a little bit of that with Killian. I mean, I have seen times where he'll have like he'll take a more difficult shot. Like instead of having like a right-handed layup, he'll take a floater that's contested because his hand is right over the defender's hand. But I think the most underrated part about his game it's his finishing. Like I did the numbers, and I want to say the only guard out of the projected first round picks or projected guys that would go mid first round, but the only guard that shot a higher percentage than Killian at the rim was Tyrese Halliburton. Now, Halliburton, if he shot at the rim, it was because it was like a layup, a wide open layup.
I mean, when you get to the rim 2 times a game,
Yeah.
the percentage can be pretty good.
Right. Or, maybe I don't even know if they broke it down to whether or not the shots counted in the half court or not. But yeah, I mean, every Halliburton layup I saw was when he got a steal in transition.
Yeah.
But yeah, Killian shot like a higher percentage than Anthony Edwards, LaMelo, even Cole Anthony shot pretty horribly at the rim this year. I think it was like 38%. But,
We're about to talk about him.
Floor spacing, whatever. But yeah, for a guy that isn't considered to be like this freak athlete or have this awesome blow by speed or above the rim athleticism, and only uses one hand around the rim, I was pretty impressed with Killian's his field goal percentage.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to let you talk about him before we brought up the negatives, but yeah, he's super left-hand dominant, and you see it on the finishing sometimes. I see it a lot on the passing too. Like he'll come around a ball screen or he'll attack the defense, and he'll have an opportunity for a right-hand hook or right-hand live dribble, and he'll throw like this little like inside like push flick pass like with his left, and sometimes it'll get deflected because all defenders, like basketball is a game of split seconds, and we talked about that with the load time. It's everything, and all the second that you give up going to the left and grabbing it and then changing your hand around and then pushing it out with the left as opposed to just taking it straight from dribble to hook with the right, like that's all defenders need. And that's happened multiple occasions throughout the season. Again, it's not going to be like detrimental to him, but it's definitely something to work on. Everyone has something to work on, and improving his right hand is one. And then the other big concern that I have with him is the catch and shoot, just shooting. Like it would be awesome if I could just be like, you know what, Killian Hayes is like, I'm super comfortable as him as a scalable point guard. He can go on off the ball. I don't know if I can get there yet. Like he's been pretty horrific as a catch and shoot shooter for 3 years now. And it doesn't really make sense because the mechanics aren't broken. Like they are not broken by any means. And he's a 90% free throw shooter, like high 80% free throw shooter for those same 3-year sample. So, I mean, with I've chalked some of it up to just not being comfortable off ball. Like he's always been the point guard. And if you look at his footwork off the catch compared to his footwork off the bounce, his footwork off the bounce is a million times cleaner off the catch. Like off the catch, he'll fumble his feet sometimes. Like he'll shoot with his feet really close together, shoot with them staggered. It's kind of all over the place. But like he grew up playing with Maladone and FIBA. So like he ideally would get off ball reps there. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I think that's a huge part for his development because then if he gets to passable there, then we're talking about a 6'5" point guard who can guard both positions, finish at the rim, create his own shot, is a wicked passer, and can be passable off the ball. Like that's a pretty big time player.
Yeah, and I'm definitely a believer in him becoming a better shooter. I mean, he made the strides he made shooting off the ball, which is weird. It's usually the opposite. You become a better catch and shoot shooter than. So I'm definitely buying into him becoming a good shooter. I mean, just based off his touch and if you believe free throw shooting is an indicator of your shooting touch, then there shouldn't be any concerns there. All right, best case scenario and worst case or worst fit.
So my best case scenario, let me just pull this up. For Killian, my best case scenario, I have Detroit.
Right on.
Because I want to see him rock out and I want to see him get the reps. And with Detroit, I like Luke Kennard more than most, but I don't really know if he's in their long-term plans. Like you said, Derrick Rose probably not in their long-term plans. Blake, we'll see what they do with him if they can get off his contract. Long-term, like they don't really have anyone that is like permanently, okay, this guy is in our core. And what better guy to start off that with than Killian Hayes? And I just think you put him in some place where he can get all the reps. And I think you want, like, he's similar to Melo. Like, you want him getting the reps. And I'm okay like in German league in the first few games, like he had a bunch of high turnover games, and I'm okay with that. Like I'm okay with him doing that for the first 2 months of his NBA career. See what works, see what windows are open. What windows can you create? Are they the same windows you've been creating your entire life, or do you need to look for something new? Do you need to be a split second quicker? Like these are the little internal things that I want him to be thinking about for the first like 2 years of his career. And I think Detroit gives him a pretty good spot to do that.
Yeah, be a nice French connection with him and Sekou. I'm sure
Yep.
they would like that. So what team do you think would not be the best situation for him?
I've seen people throw this out there, and I just don't really like I don't get it, is the Atlanta fit. Like
Yeah.
I just don't really understand it. Like I get it on the defensive side of the ball. Like I don't know. I really just don't get it, because I look at Killian, and his value is derived from being on the ball and being a wicked passer and brilliant creator. And playing with Trey, you're now taking away what he's good at, which is not dominating, but being on the ball, creating looks for himself and others. And you're literally singling him in the one place where he's like really bad at right now. Like whether he improves or not, that's to be determined. But like right now, he is not a very good catch and shoot shooter. And so I don't know why one would want to like pigeonhole him into what he's bad at and like limit what he's good at. So that's a fit I just don't really get.
I mean, I guess I can see a little bit if you're buying into him as a good shooter long term. And then if you want to bring Trey off the ball from time to time, because Killian can guard both positions. So I see it a little bit, but if I'm the Hawks, that wouldn't be my choice.
I agree.
All right, number 5.
So this is where things start to get dicey. And like I've said that a million times. Like I'm confident about the first 4. Like that, I'm good with that. Then from 5 on, I don't know. But
Nobody
I have 5
does.
right now.
Nobody
does. So at 5 right now, I have Cole Anthony. And I know that's like a shock to some. I've seen him like in the second round of some people's boards. Like
that's a little crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I'd skim past those. But I mean,
that's a Duke fan. Somebody just really hates North Carolina.
In mainstream boards, like he's been late lottery. I've seen that. And I do think long term that's better for him, because there's just less pressure on him and less pressure on someone like Cole, who has had the spotlight on him since he was in 9th grade and has been under a microscope forever. It can't hurt. And the later on you get down the draft order, the better the team gets generally. And I also think that's good for Cole. And why I have Cole that high is we talked about context. And I don't think there's a worse team context than North Carolina and Cole Anthony. There's no way around it. You play 2 bigs at all times who cannot shoot. Your guards are leaky black who can't shoot. And the rest of the guards are like guys like Justin Pierce and Christian Keeling, who transferred up and just weren't good enough for ACC basketball, straight up. And so he had he got some good minutes from Anthony Harris, but then he tore his ACL. So like he kind of just couldn't catch a break. So the spacing combined with the injuries to himself and his team, like he never played with the full strength team. And considering the team wasn't even that good in the first place, like we talked about, you take it down a notch.
There?
So
why go there? I mean, I get it's North Carolina and there's the whole prestige behind it, but I was wondering, like, that this is not going to be a really good team. And I don't know. I guess maybe he saw what Kobe White did.
So what I was going to say is, like, first of all, I picked North Carolina to go to the Final Four in preseason predictions. So, like, I thought they were going to be good. Yeah, this year I picked them to go to the Final Four. Whoa. And Cole was my National Player of the Year. So I really bought Cole. And a part of that was, well, to answer your question, I think he saw Kobe White. And Kobe White ran up and down the court and created his shots. But something that Kobe had and Cole clearly didn't have was Cam Johnson, who was probably the best shooter in the country last year in his draft year. And Cole really could use that. So but why I'm so high on Cole, a lot of it is the pre-draft sample. Like, Cole was single-handedly one of the most dominant high school AU players that I've ever seen. Like, he literally EYBL MVP in his rising senior summer, one of the EYBL first team rising junior summer, played in the Peach Jam Championship alongside Quaddy Green and Mo Bamba at like rising sophomore summer. Like he was just a complete mainstay in the best circuit in the country, in the world, and dominated it for 2 years. And like when I'm talking dominate, like I'm talking like high volume scoring, like in the high 20s per game on like high 40s and high 30s from three on like super high volume, super high difficulty. Like this pull-up shooting that he sometimes got to show in North Carolina, like that was every single game in the UIBL. And I bought that he would grow as a passer. I think he is capable when he tries on defense. Like he has some nice weak side rim protection flashes. He's a really powerful athlete. We talked about Ant. They're not like, obviously Cole is much smaller, but you kind of get the same like explosion. But at UNC, Cole was a lot less bursty, and I don't know why. I've been trying to figure that out since we saw him in November, December. Maybe it was a lingering injury. Maybe it was just the floor was so much more shrunk that like he looked less bursty. I genuinely don't know. If someone could tell me the answer to that question, that'd be greatly appreciated. But I haven't seen one person who knows. But so with that uncertainty and with the just general amount of uncertainty in the class, I'm willing to bet on the Cole that I saw pre-college and the flashes that I saw in North Carolina, because that guy didn't disappear. Like he had monster game scoring, monster game shooting the ball, the shot creation, like these step backs. He was a really good shooter, and especially a really good pull-up shooter. I don't know if he's this primary, like stud scoring guard, Dame type primary point guard that I once thought he was, but I do think he's going to be a very good combo guard in the league for a long time. Or I'll
I
say
like the fact
good
that you
combo.
said combo guard
Yeah.
because I think his off the ball shooting allows him to play both positions. But one of the things I do like about him is, and I said it in one of my videos, is that he's a dog. Like he has this mentality that he's always in attack mode. North Carolina was bad, and he still came back and he played. I mean, he could have easily shut it down. And so that's one of the things I like about him as far as just like his intangibles, because I mean, think how many guys would have just said, you know what, I think I'm lottery, whatever. So I don't want to get hurt. Even like Darius Garland, I think he could have probably came back last year.
Yeah, I think DG, like, I don't know if he needs surgery or not, but like, yeah, I don't know. Who knows?
It's like the third game of the year. And it's the same injury, right? They both tore their meniscus.
I think DG fully tore it. So I think he needed like real surgery versus Cole was just a partial tear so he could rehab. But with Cole, like, yeah, he easily could have said, look, I'm out. Like he could have said this was a lingering injury from the first game of the season. So excuse all my performances. I'm not going to re-injure this. And when you're drafting me, think about the dude I was pre-college. Like he could have easily said that. Yeah. And look, intel with Cole was all over the place, but like that's pretty much indisputable. Like whether you can say, like I've had people try to tell me he came back to raise his draft stock. Like to what extent? Like why? He came back because he wants to play, and that I don't know how much that means to me, but it means something.
It means a lot to me because even when he came back aggressive. I want to say he had like a 13 free throw attempt game in like his second or third game back, which just tells me that he's mentally strong. Because, you know, a lot of times when guys have injuries, they're, especially in what he had on the line, they're protecting their injury. They're trying not to, you know, re-aggravate it, which is common. But I think there's a certain level of craziness you have to be a great player. And a lot of them have it. And he does have that intangible as to, look, I know I injured my knee. I know we have no spacing on this team. I know this team is bad, but I'm still coming out and attacking the paint and drawing fouls. So that part I do like about him. As far as his passing, I don't think he's a good passer. I think he shows flashes of making the simple pass, but I don't see advanced like court vision out of him. So what do you think about his passing?
So, I mean, there was this one clip where it was like, I'd probably, because I wrote about him in like one of my pieces like 2 months ago. and went pretty deep into him. And there's this one clip I've probably watched it like 30 times, like trying to figure out, okay, is this beneficial? Like basically it was a pick and roll and he hit like Garrison Brooks on the quick pick and roll, but like probably could have dragged the corner help and then swung it to the corner. But like is that because he's incapable of making that read, or he just saw Garrison Brooks and slipped in there? Then there was another pass where it's like you could pause it. He probably sees that window if he's a super advanced passer. And like the conclusion I came to is like if I'm having to ask these questions, like he's probably not a super advanced passer. But my question is, does he need to be? And I don't think he needs to be, because at the end of the day, his game is predicated on scoring the ball. And when you score the ball and you can get into the paint and you can collect defenders, those passing reads get a million times easier. So he doesn't, like Tyrese Halliburton needs to be an absolute wizard to get these passes off, because he's not drawing anybody. He doesn't have that gravity. So if we're talking about Cole, I really think the pull-up shooting is going to translate, and like to a high level. I think he will be a high-level shot maker, especially off the bounce. Then you say, okay, if he can kind of, like, the finishing was horrible, but there's plenty of finishes where he's getting like to the rim and then he has to like completely change his jumping like angle because Garrison Brooks is standing right there, Armando Bacot's standing right there. Like these happen. I'm not saying they happen all the time, but they happen. And that's why like the finishing number, like Cole's at the rim percentage, like it gets tossed to me a lot. And like it's just not that valid to me. Like if you watch the games, it happens all the time. So with Cole, there's projection, but it's not necessarily projection because I've seen him do it before, and I've seen him do it at very high levels. And look, we saw this with Cam Reddish last year. Like Cam Reddish got put in a horrible position, but like you bought the dude that you saw pre-college, and you bought that some of the stuff is still there. I think I had Cam like 6th last year, and that's going to turn out pretty good. Just if you were just looking at the Duke sample, no way he would end up 6th, but that's not all there is to it. You can't judge these guys based off a 20-game sample in Cole's sense. And so I'm betting on what I saw before, and I'm betting on what it looks like when placed in a team context that's not absolutely horrific.
All right. Best case scenario, where would you like to see him go?
So my favorite fit is this is actually super interesting. I was kind of all over the place with this. I like Phoenix for Cole. And I've actually, because, and I think this is like in his draft range on, like Cole's pretty fascinating because I don't, and this is for a lot of guys in my lottery, like especially the guys that I'm higher on, I don't know where their draft range is. And I like Phoenix because Devin Booker has taken incredible strides as a passer. Like he is a legit like good passer. I think Book is forever underrated because people just can't separate team wins from like the fact that he's had 5 coaches in 5 years and has no one else on his team to play defense or whatever. Team isn't built around him. We can go on a Devin Booker tangent that me or you probably don't really want to go on, but nonetheless, I think where Cole comes in is he can play alongside Devin Booker because he can go off ball, right, and he can play alongside Ricky Rubio because he can go off ball and like with that shooting like we were talking about. But he can also, look, Book is a great scorer, and Ricky Rubio, he can go off ball a little bit. Like we've seen it. We saw it with Donovan Mitchell when he was in Utah. And so I just think he kind of fits with like all 3 of those guys in the backcourt, that they're all relatively scalable. So with Cole, I think that's one of his better landing scenarios for that they can allow him to run off screens and come off curls and take these movement threes, but also there's enough reps for him on the ball to grow as a pick and roll passer and scorer.
I like that. I think that's an interesting fit because I know I had him, at least on when I did my boards, I thought that the best case scenarios for him would be to begin his career as like a 6-man. Mm-hmm. And I thought Phoenix was a good fit. I thought even Washington, because if he's the 6-man his rookie year and he learns from John Wall, just having a veteran like John Wall, and then if Wall is not the same player, then hopefully you can pass it over to him as
I don't mind that one at all.
His sophomore year or sophomore season. And then I even thought New Orleans would be interesting if he comes off the bench. That's another one I had. Yeah, because you don't know what's going to happen with Holiday. And so I think Anthony and Lonzo complement each other, because what Lonzo doesn't do, Cole Anthony does, and then both of them would be good off the ball catch and shooters for Ingram and Zion. So yeah, I like the Phoenix one. I think it would be pretty interesting to see him and Booker in the backcourt together. I think that would be. I mean, it has the potential to be one of the best backcourts if he reaches his maximum potential. But obviously, you're really really high on
Yeah,
him,
I like
and you
him.
think that
I like him a lot.
yeah, I mean, I haven't seen him as high as 5, and so that's one of the things I appreciate about like your work is you're not following the crowd. Like you base your opinions off of what you see and how you see it, and not a lot of people do that. A lot of times it's copy, and then you make a few changes here and there, but you're not afraid to put a guy who's somebody. I think most people probably have him in the, I don't know, 8 through 14 range.
Yeah, I think he's probably like more like late lotto consensus now, to be honest.
And you have him top 5, so that's one of the things, like I said, I really appreciate about your work. Well, I was hoping to get through all 14. We're over an hour now.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that you will accept the invitation to come back on very soon, and we can do 5 through 10 or 5 through 14. I like to keep my podcast within the hour range instead of the like really long 2-hour ones. But this has been so good that I looked up and I'm like, wow, it's been close to an hour and we're only at 5. So yeah, I mean, it's an invitation. Hopefully, we can do this again pretty soon. But I really, really appreciate your insight and just coming on the show as a guest. I know there's kind of short notice. You mentioned it. And so, again, I'm with Jake Rosen. And Jake, can you tell people where they can find you out on social media?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me, as I mentioned before, at Jake in the Paint on Twitter. That's where you can find me tweeting about basketball every single day. I'm super open to engaging with people, sometimes to my own detriment, but feel free reply to any of my tweets at me if you want to have any questions. Like I said, my latest LaMelo Ball piece is pinned to my Twitter. If you don't want to go to my Twitter, you can just find it at jakeinthepaint.com, and you can go to the blog section and you can find all the draft articles I've written in the past year. So that's where you can find me at. And thank you again for having me. I'll definitely be back.
All right. Sounds good. Well, once again, it's Raphael with NBA Draft Junkies. If you're watching on YouTube and you want to listen to the podcast version, you can find NBA Draft Junkies on Spotify, Apple Music. Not Apple Music, iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcast at. And if you're listening on a podcast, but you want to actually see the video version, or you want to check out my YouTube channel where I have different player breakdowns, it's NBA Draft Junkies on YouTube. NBADraftJunkies.com is my website. And once again, this is Raphael Barlow with NBA Draft Junkies signing out.